In a galaxy far beyond Earth's reach, countless civilizations struggled for power, resources, and survival. Yet, amidst the chaos, one species had always managed to stand tall, the Drazar. Tall and imposing, with scales that shimmered like molten gold, the Drazar were fierce warriors. Their civilization was ancient, their technology far beyond what most other species could imagine. They ruled their vast empire with an iron grip, their queen a symbol of both strength and authority. Zorana, the queen of the Drazar, had seen it all. She had fought in countless battles, negotiated peace treaties, and forged alliances that allowed her people to thrive. At first, she had thought humanity would be little more than another footnote in the history of the galaxy. But that had changed when Earth's diplomats came to her with an offer: humanity. A species of small, fragile beings who lived on a pale blue dot in a far corner of the galaxy, had achieved what many thought impossible. They had learned to navigate the stars, to fight in space, and to survive in the harshest of environments. Yet, in the eyes of the Drazar, they were still weak. Zorana had been skeptical of their promise of peace and cooperation. After all, the human race had barely made a mark on the galactic stage. But the humans offered something different: an alliance. One that would help end the long-standing war between the Drazar and their greatest enemies, the Varkari. The Varkari were a brutal, warlike species, and their attacks on Drazar territory had been a constant threat. In exchange for peace, the humans offered a marriage proposal. The queen of the Drazar would marry a human ambassador. It was a bold and unexpected move, one that would bridge the gap between two very different worlds. Zorana had been wary, but after careful consideration, she agreed to the proposal. The marriage would symbolize the beginning of a new era, one where the Drazar and humans could stand side by side. She had little hope that the human would be anything remarkable. After all, humans were still known as a species that had to rely on technology and tactics to survive. In comparison to the Drazar, who were born with incredible strength and intelligence, the humans were far weaker. The human ambassador chosen for this unprecedented alliance was Marcus Sutherland, a quiet, composed man in his early 30s. Marcus had earned a reputation as one of Earth's finest diplomats. He had no military background, nor did he appear to be anything more than an average human. He was tall by human standards, but nothing in his appearance would have suggested he could stand toe-to-toe with a Drazar warrior, let alone be worthy of their queen's hand in marriage. Still, the humans believed that Marcus was the best choice for the peace negotiations. The wedding took place on Drazar Prime, the heart of the Drazar Empire. It was a grand affair, a celebration of the union of two species that had once been enemies. The massive city was floating in the sky, surrounded by shimmering clouds and vast fields that stretched for miles. The palace, built into the side of a mountain, was a fortress of gold and silver. The ceremony itself was attended by leaders from many different races, who had traveled far to witness this historic moment. Zorana stood tall at the altar, regal and composed in her ceremonial armor, her long, dark hair flowing around her shoulders. She looked out at the crowd with a steady gaze, her mind focused on the task at hand. As she waited for Marcus to arrive, she wondered what the humans were really like. She had met many diplomats in her time, but none had impressed her. They were all talk, always careful with their words, but never willing to act when it came down to it. Finally, the doors to the grand hall opened, and Marcus walked in. He was dressed in a simple yet elegant suit, his brown hair neatly combed and his posture upright. As he stepped forward, the crowd went silent. He was not the giant warrior that Zorana had expected. He was not the kind of man who could strike fear into an opponent with a single glance. But there was something about him. Perhaps it was the way he carried himself, with a quiet confidence that made him stand out even in the presence of such powerful beings. When Marcus reached the altar, he bowed respectfully to Zorana, offering her a kind, yet slightly nervous, smile. Zorana studied him for a moment, trying to read his expression. He didn't seem afraid, which surprised her. Most humans she had met had been cautious around her, but not Marcus. There was something calm, almost detached, about him that made her wonder what he was truly thinking. The ceremony proceeded without incident. There were no grand displays of strength or power, just words exchanged and promises made. As Zorana slipped the ornate ring onto Marcus's finger, she couldn't help but feel a slight twinge of unease. This was no ordinary alliance. It was an unprecedented union between two very different species. For all her confidence, Zorana couldn't shake the feeling that she had just made a decision that would change the course of her life in ways she couldn't yet understand. The reception that followed was a lavish affair, with feasts, music, and dancing. The other alien leaders congratulated the newlyweds, but Zorana remained distant. She observed the guests, keeping an eye on the various factions in her court, always watching for any signs of trouble. But as the evening wore on, she found her attention drifting back to Marcus. He was speaking with some of the human diplomats, but he didn't seem interested in the festivities. Instead, he was focused on the political landscape, asking questions about the challenges the Drazar faced and discussing solutions in a way that was both precise and intelligent. Zorana was intrigued. She had expected Marcus to be a mere figurehead, someone to sit beside her at events and play the role of a husband. But as the night wore on, she began to realize that he was far more than that. There was a sharpness to his mind, a keen insight that Zorana hadn't anticipated. And yet, she still wasn't sure what to make of him. Was he truly capable of handling the responsibilities that would come with this marriage? Or was this all part of some human scheme that she was too blind to see? As the night came to a close, Zorana and Marcus retired to their chambers. Zorana had learned much about him in the brief time they had spent together. He was calm, thoughtful, and surprisingly insightful. But beneath the surface, there was a quiet strength to him that she couldn't quite place. She wondered if this human, this diplomat, could truly be the one to help her people. Would he live up to the expectations placed upon him? Or would he falter under the weight of his new responsibilities? As she lay in bed that night, staring up at the stars visible through the window, Zorana couldn't shake the feeling that this marriage, and Marcus himself, would prove to be far more important than she had ever anticipated. There was something about him, something hidden beneath the surface, and she couldn't help but feel that the human she had married might just be the one who would change everything for the Drazar and their place in the galaxy. The days that followed the wedding were filled with a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. Zorana, the queen of the Drazar, had been busy managing her empire, trying to keep peace among the various factions within her court. Yet, no matter how much work piled up, she couldn't stop thinking about Marcus, her new husband. The human diplomat who had been chosen for this marriage had proven himself to be far more than what she had expected. His quiet intelligence and calm demeanor had caught her attention, but Zorana still had doubts. Could this human, so different from her people, truly contribute to the safety and future of the Drazar? The answer to that question would come sooner than Zorana could have imagined. Trouble was brewing in the galaxy. The Varkari, an enemy race that had long been a thorn in the side of the Drazar Empire, had been growing bolder. Their brutal attacks on Drazar territory had intensified, and soon, the Varkari forces were threatening to invade Drazar Prime itself. Zorana knew that she needed to act quickly, but she was not sure how. The Drazar military, while powerful, had been struggling to keep up with the Varkari's aggressive tactics. Despite their strength, the Drazar soldiers were not always the most strategic when it came to outhinking their enemies. The Varkari relied heavily on surprise tactics and relentless aggression, which the Drazar, with their prideful nature, had difficulty countering. Zorana called for a war council in the Grand Hall of the palace, hoping to gather some of the brightest military minds to come up with a plan. But as she sat at the head of the table, listening to the commanders argue, Zorana grew more and more frustrated. Everyone seemed to be focused on brute force, trying to overpower the Varkari through sheer strength. But Zorana knew that strength alone would not win this war. She needed something more. It was then that Marcus, her husband, quietly entered the room. He had been spending the past few days studying Drazar military strategies and learning about the Varkari. Zorana had not expected him to participate in the war council. After all, he was a diplomat. not a soldier, but he had a reputation for being level-headed, and perhaps his human perspective could offer something the Drazar commanders had missed. "Your Majesty," Marcus began, his voice calm and steady. "If I may offer a suggestion." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to him. Zorana raised an eyebrow. This was not the time for speeches or politics. She had her mind set on a direct military response. But something in Marcus's voice caught her attention. He wasn't asking for permission. He was offering a solution. Zorana nodded, giving him a sign to speak. "I understand that you have the strength to face the Varkari head-on," Marcus continued. "But I believe that's not where your advantage lies. Strength in battle is important, yes, but strategy and surprise are what will win this war." Zorana's gaze narrowed. She was used to the Drazar military relying on their strength and power, not on subtlety. She had seen countless commanders think they could crush the Varkari with sheer force. But Marcus wasn't finished yet. "Imagine if we could turn the tables on them," he said. "The Varkari rely on overwhelming force and surprise. They assume that their tactics will always catch others off guard. What if we were to take the fight to them, not in the way they expect, but by using deception and unpredictability?" There was a long pause as the commanders looked at each other. Zorana, too, was silent, considering Marcus's words. She had always believed in the Drazar's superiority, and she had never relied much on trickery or misdirection. But Marcus's idea was intriguing. If they could trick the Varkari into thinking they were weaker than they actually were, they could gain the upper hand. "What do you propose?" Zorana asked, her voice soft yet firm. She was willing to listen. At least Marcus smiled, clearly pleased that she was open to his idea. "I believe we should focus on smaller, more mobile strike teams rather than traditional large-scale battles. We'll use the terrain to our advantage, set traps, and mislead the Varkari into thinking we're retreating when we're actually preparing to strike." The Drazar commanders were skeptical. They were used to fighting in massive, direct engagements, where their strength and weaponry would be decisive. But Marcus's proposal suggested a different approach, smaller, more precise attacks designed to confuse and disorient the enemy. "This will require careful coordination," Marcus continued, "and we'll need to move quickly. But with the element of surprise on our side, we can break the Varkari's confidence." Zorana leaned forward, intrigued by his words. She was no stranger to tactics and warfare, but she had never thought about using deception in this way. Still, she was not entirely convinced. "You want to put my soldiers into smaller units and hope that the Varkari fall for it? They are vicious, relentless. They will not be easily fooled." "I understand that," Marcus replied, his tone unshaken. "But that's why we must act fast. The Varkari expect you to be predictable, but we can use their assumptions against them." Zorana sat back in her chair, her thoughts racing. For the first time in days, a plan was forming in her mind. It wasn't about brute strength. It was about using their weaknesses against them, about turning the Varkari's confidence into their downfall. She could see the potential in Marcus's words. Perhaps this human diplomat, with his calm and strategic mind, was more than just a figurehead. Perhaps he was the key to winning this war. "I'll give you the resources you need," Zorana finally said, her voice firm. "But you will lead this strategy. It's your idea. You will prove that your plan works, or you will answer for the failure." Marcus nodded without hesitation. "Understood, Your Majesty. I won't let you down." Over the next few days, Marcus worked tirelessly to prepare his strategy. He coordinated with the Drazar military, assigning small, highly trained teams to carry out the deceptive strikes. The Drazar soldiers, initially hesitant, began to trust Marcus's plan as they saw the logic in it. Zorana kept a close eye on the operation, watching as the human worked alongside her people. Not as a foreigner, but as a commander. The day of the first strike arrived. The Drazar forces, divided into smaller units, set out to ambush the Varkari, drawing them into carefully planned traps. Marcus had told them to expect confusion and chaos on the battlefield, and that's exactly what they got. The Varkari, expecting a direct assault from the Drazar, were caught completely off guard. The Drazar units struck quickly and precisely, using the cover of terrain and the element of surprise to take down the Varkari one group at a time. The Varkari commanders, unable to keep up with the unpredictable nature of the attack, quickly lost control of the battle. When the day was over, Zorana stood on the battlefield, staring at the wreckage left behind. The Drazar had won, and it was thanks to Marcus's plan. Zorana turned to look at him. He stood there, calm and collected, as if the victory had been expected. "You were right," she said, her voice filled with a mix of admiration and surprise. "This was not the way I would have fought, but it worked." Marcus nodded, his eyes scanning the battlefield. "Sometimes, strength isn't enough. Sometimes, you need to outthink your enemies." Zorana's respect for him grew that day. She realized that Marcus was not just a human diplomat. He was a man of action, a man who understood the true meaning of strategy. And for the first time since their marriage, Zorana felt that she had made the right choice. The days after their victory were filled with a quiet sense of accomplishment. The Drazar Empire had won the battle against the Varkari, thanks to Marcus's unexpected and unorthodox strategy. News of the victory spread quickly throughout Drazar Prime, and the people celebrated their queen's leadership and the success of the military. But while the celebrations echoed through the palace halls, Zorana remained focused. She had come to realize that Marcus was not the simple human she had once thought him to be. His intelligence, his calm under pressure, and his ability to outthink the Varkari had impressed her more than she had anticipated. Still, something about Marcus lingered in Zorana's mind. She could not shake the feeling that there was more to him than what he had shown. His true abilities, hidden behind the quiet demeanor and diplomatic skills, seemed to be something even more remarkable. She had seen how easily he led the Drazar soldiers, how smoothly he coordinated the strikes that turned the tide of battle. But something in the back of her mind kept whispering, "There's more to him than just his strategies." It wasn't long before Zorana's suspicions were confirmed. One morning, as the sun began to rise over Drazar Prime, Zorana was called to the training grounds by one of her military advisors. The training grounds were vast, a place where Drazar soldiers trained day in and day out to hone their combat skills. Zorana's sharp eyes scanned the grounds as she arrived. She expected to see soldiers sparring with swords and practicing their hand-to-hand combat techniques, but what she saw caught her by surprise. In the middle of the training arena stood Marcus, his stance steady and composed, facing off against a group of Drazar warriors. The warriors, dressed in their full battle armor, looked powerful, their tall frames towering over Marcus, who was dressed simply in human combat gear. Zorana raised an eyebrow, wondering what was going on. Had Marcus challenged the Drazar warriors to a fight? That seemed highly unlikely. The Drazar were known for their strength and combat prowess, and no human could possibly match them in a direct confrontation, or so Zorana thought. As she watched, the fight began. Marcus moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost unnatural for a human. He dodged and weaved with precision, avoiding the Drazar warriors' heavy strikes while simultaneously landing blows that were fast and devastating. Zorana's eyes widened as she saw the ease with which Marcus moved. It was as though he could anticipate the warrior's every move, and each strike he delivered seemed to land with exacting force. She was so captivated by what she was seeing that she didn't notice one of the warriors had broken through Marcus's defenses. The Drazar soldier lunged at Marcus with a massive sword, but Marcus reacted with lightning speed. In a blur of motion, he sidestepped, grabbed the warrior's arm, and with a swift twist, sent the soldier crashing to the ground. The force of the move left the soldier stunned and gasping for breath, unable to stand up. Zorana's heart skipped a beat. This was no ordinary human. She had seen the strength of the Drazar warriors before, and even she had to admit that their combat skills were unmatched in the galaxy. But Marcus was something entirely different. The way he moved, the way he handled the Drazar warriors as though they were no more than mere children. It left her speechless. When the fight was over, Marcus stood in the center of the arena, breathing evenly. Not a single scratch marred his clothes, while the Drazar warriors were left struggling to catch their breath, clearly overwhelmed. Zorana felt a sudden realization wash over her. She had known that Marcus was capable, but she hadn't expected this. This wasn't just the strength of a human diplomat. This was something else entirely. The training field grew silent as Zorana stepped forward, her eyes locked on Marcus. He turned to face her, his expression calm as always, though a slight glint of exhaustion showed in his eyes. You were holding back, Zorana said, her voice barely above a whisper. As if she were trying to make sense of what had just happened, Marcus nodded, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. I didn't want to cause unnecessary harm. The Drazar warriors are strong, but I didn't need to push them to their limits. Zorana's mind was racing. How could a human move like that? She had heard whispers of Earth's secret military projects, but she had dismissed them as rumors. Now, watching Marcus in action, she knew there was more to him than anyone had let on. You're not just a diplomat, are you? Zorana asked, her voice steady but filled with curiosity. Marcus hesitated for a moment, his gaze turning toward the fallen Drazar soldiers, who were now slowly getting back on their feet. They were clearly embarrassed by the fight, but Zorana noticed that there was no anger in their eyes, only awe. They had witnessed something extraordinary. I wasn't always a diplomat, Marcus finally said, his voice low. There was a time when I served in a different capacity, a special program designed to enhance human abilities. It's not something I talk about often, but it's part of who I am. Zorana studied him carefully, her sharp eyes searching his face for any hint of deception. She found none. Everything about Marcus, from his calm demeanor to his measured words, seemed genuine. What kind of program? Zorana asked, her tone softening. It was called the Ascension Initiative. Marcus replied, it was a secret project back on Earth. The goal was to unlock the full potential of human biology, to push human strength, speed, and endurance beyond what was thought possible. I was one of the subjects, one of the few who survived the process. Zorana's eyes widened. The idea of humans enhancing their abilities with technology wasn't new to her, but she had never imagined that Earth had the means to create such powerful individuals. The Drazar had always considered themselves the strongest species in the galaxy, but Marcus was proving them wrong. Why didn't you tell me? Zorana asked, her voice filled with both frustration and fascination. I didn't want you to see me as a weapon or a tool for war, Marcus said, his gaze meeting hers. I wanted to be more than that, to be someone who could help guide our people through peace. Not just strength, but the time has come when that peace needs to be defended. Zorana remained silent for a moment, processing his words. She had always believed in the power of strength, of the Drazar's unmatched physical prowess. But now, she was beginning to see that strength came in many forms. Marcus's power was not just in his physical abilities, but in his mind, his understanding of strategy, and his calm under pressure. And now, his strength in battle had shown her that even a human could surpass the limits of what she had thought was possible. For the first time since their marriage, Zorana felt a deep sense of respect for Marcus. He was not just the human diplomat she had married for political reasons. He was someone who could stand with her, shoulder to shoulder, and face whatever challenges lay ahead, someone who could change the fate of the Drazar and humans alike. You're more than I ever imagined, Marcus, Zorana said softly, her voice filled with genuine admiration. Marcus smiled, though it was a humble smile. I'm just trying to do my part, Your Majesty, as the two of them stood there, surrounded by the quiet training field and the recovering Drazar warriors. Zorana knew that their relationship was shifting. The future of the Drazar and humanity now rested not just on the strength of their armies, but on the combined power of their minds, their hearts, and their unexpected alliance. The days following Marcus's display of strength left Zorana both impressed and confused. The Drazar warriors, who had once regarded Marcus as nothing more than a human diplomat, now saw him in an entirely different light. His skill, speed, and power had proven that he was not just an ordinary man. But even as Zorana's respect for him grew, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to Marcus than even he had revealed. Zorana had spent her entire life surrounded by powerful beings. The Drazar were known throughout the galaxy for their strength and intelligence. And she had always relied on the idea that physical power was the key to survival. But Marcus had shown her a different side of strength, one that didn't rely solely on size or force. His calm, precise movements in battle, his ability to think several steps ahead, had opened her eyes to a new kind of power. Yet, something in Marcus's demeanor told her that there was still more he wasn't sharing. His abilities went far beyond anything a normal human could possess, and Zorana was determined to uncover the truth. One evening, after a long day of meetings with her generals, Zorana decided to confront Marcus. The two of them had been married for weeks now, yet she still knew so little about him. They had talked about politics, war, and strategy, but never about the past. Zorana knew it was time to finally ask the question that had been weighing on her mind. She found him in the quiet solitude of their chambers, sitting by a large window that overlooked the vast, glowing city of Drazar Prime. The stars above twinkled in the distance, and the air outside was warm, but the atmosphere in the room felt thick with unspoken words. "Marcus," Zorana began, her voice calm but firm. "We need to talk." Marcus turned to face her, his eyes meeting hers with a look of understanding. He had known that this conversation was inevitable. His secret, the truth about what he was something he had kept hidden for years. He had never wanted anyone to know, especially not Zorana. But now, standing in the glow of the Drazar night, he realized that the time had come. "I know what you're going to ask," Marcus said quietly, "and I think you deserve to know." Zorana crossed the room and stood before him, her arms crossed over her chest. "Why didn't you tell me, Marcus?" she asked, her voice softer now, though the curiosity in her eyes remained sharp. "Why did you hide your true strength from me, from everyone?" Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't want you to see me as something unnatural. I wanted you to see me as just a man, someone who could help with the peace between our people. But I know that now, more than ever, I can't hide it." Zorana remained silent for a moment, her gaze intense as she searched his face for any signs of hesitation. "What are you, Marcus? What are you really?" For a long time, Marcus didn't answer. He stared out the window for a few moments, his mind racing. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and steady. "I wasn't always a diplomat," he began, his words heavy with the weight of years of secrecy. "I was part of a secret military program on Earth. It was called the Ascension Initiative. The goal was to enhance human abilities, to unlock the full potential of the human body. It was meant to create soldiers who could rival the most powerful beings in the galaxy. I was one of the first test subjects." Zorana's heart skipped a beat. She had heard rumors about such programs before, but she had never truly believed them. The idea that humans could be genetically or chemically enhanced to surpass their natural limits was almost as strange to accept. But here Marcus was, standing before her, revealing that the rumors were true. "Why did you keep this a secret?" Zorana asked, her voice a mixture of shock and curiosity. "You could have told me. You could have helped me lead Drazar into a new era of strength and cooperation." "I didn't want to be seen as a weapon," Marcus replied, his gaze never leaving hers. "I didn't want to be used for my strength. I wanted to be a partner to you, not a tool. I thought that if I revealed what I could do, people would see me as just a soldier. I wanted you to see me as a person, not just someone who was created for a purpose." Zorana could feel the weight of his words. She had always prided herself on her strength, the strength of her people, the Drazar. But Marcus had shown her something different, something she had never imagined. It wasn't just his physical strength that made him powerful. It was his mind, his understanding of strategy, and his ability to lead without relying solely on force. "I understand now," Zorana said softly. "You didn't want to be reduced to your abilities. But Marcus, your strength is part of who you are. It's not something you should hide." Marcus looked down, his shoulders sagging slightly. "I never wanted to use it against you or your people. But now, with the Varkari threat still looming, I don't know if I can keep it hidden any longer. The Drazar need more than just strategy. They need power." Zorana stepped closer to him, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "Your strength is not something to be ashamed of," she said firmly. It is part of you, and it can help us. It can help both of our peoples. But you must trust me, Marcus. You must trust that we can use this power wisely, together. For a moment, Marcus stood still, processing her words. He had always believed that his strength would be seen as a threat. But now Zorana was telling him that it was something they could share. Something that could benefit both humans and Drazar. I don't want to be your weapon, Marcus said quietly, his voice filled with a mixture of uncertainty and resolve. But I will fight by your side, Zorana. I will fight for our people. If that means using my strength, then I will. Zorana smiled, a small but sincere smile. You are more than just your strength, Marcus. But if the time comes when we need it, we will use it together. As the two of them stood there, side by side, Zorana felt a new sense of unity between them. Marcus was no longer just a diplomat or a husband. He was her partner, a powerful ally who would stand with her through whatever challenges lay ahead. And together, they would face the Varkari threat and anything else that came their way. The revelation about Marcus's past had changed everything, but it had also brought them closer. Zorana knew that, with Marcus by her side, they could lead the Drazar and humanity into a future of strength, unity, and peace. The war with the Varkari had escalated. After Marcus revealed his true abilities, Zorana had placed her full trust in him. Together, they had built a plan to end the conflict once and for all. The Drazar military, inspired by Marcus's leadership, had become more unified and determined. For the first time in many years, the Drazar weren't just relying on their strength. They were using strategy, deception, and agility to outmaneuver the Varkari forces. The Varkari, known for their aggression and relentless tactics, had underestimated the Drazar and their new allies. They had not expected Marcus, a human, to play such a pivotal role in the war. But the human diplomat had shown them that strength alone was not enough to win a war. It was about outhinking your enemy, about staying one step ahead. Now, the final battle was at hand. The Varkari had launched a full-scale invasion of Drazar Prime. Their forces were vast, their warships filling the skies like a dark storm. Zorana stood on the command platform of Drazar Prime's Defense Command Center, staring out at the battlefield below. Her mind was focused, her heart steady. She had always believed in the strength of her people, but this time, it wasn't just the Drazar who would decide the outcome. This time, it would be the combined strength of humans and Drazar. Working together, that would tip the scales. Marcus stood beside her, his eyes scanning the vast array of data and maps that filled the walls of the command center. He had been quiet since the battle plans were finalized. He knew that this was not just another battle. This was the turning point. If they won, the Varkari would be driven from Drazar space. If they lost, their entire civilization could be wiped out. Everything's ready, Marcus said, his voice calm and precise. The smallest strike teams are in position, and the Varkari fleet is moving into range. Zorana nodded, her gaze never leaving the screens in front of them. She had always been a warrior at heart, but she had learned a valuable lesson from Marcus. Victory was not always about brute force. It was about understanding the enemy and using their weaknesses to your advantage. This final battle would not be won by simply overpowering the Varkari. It would be won by outsmarting them. The Varkari will expect a direct assault, Marcus continued, but we'll hit them where they're vulnerable, in their communications, their leadership. Zorana's eyes narrowed as she considered his words. And if they don't fall for it? What happens if they realize we're pulling back? They will, Marcus said with a knowing look. But by the time they realize what we're doing, it'll be too late. Zorana turned to him. She knew that Marcus's plan was risky, but it was the only chance they had. The Drazar were strong, but they couldn't defeat the Varkari with sheer force alone. They needed to be unpredictable, elusive. The battle began just after sunset. The Varkari fleet moved into position, their ships dark and menacing against the stars. Zorana's forces, hidden in the shadow of Drazar Prime's moons, waited for the perfect moment to strike. The first wave of Drazar warships launched, drawing the Varkari's attention. The Varkari, believing they had the upper hand, charged forward. eager to destroy the attacking forces. But this was all part of Marcus's plan. As the Varkari closed in on the Drazar fleet, Marcus's smaller, more mobile strike teams infiltrated their command ships, taking out their communications and causing chaos within their ranks. The Varkari, unable to coordinate their forces, became disorganized. The Drazar ships, using their superior agility, weaved in and out of the Varkari fleet, launching precise, targeted attacks that crippled the enemy's defenses. Zorana watched from the command center, her heart pounding in her chest as the battle unfolded. The Varkari, once so sure of their victory, were now struggling to maintain control. The Drazar and human forces, fighting together, were proving to be more than a match for their enemies. But as the battle raged on, Zorana noticed something that made her blood run cold. A Varkari warship, far larger and more powerful than any the Drazar had seen before, emerged from the darkness. This ship was different. It had more firepower, more armor, and it was heading straight for the heart of Drazar Prime. "Marcus!" Zorana shouted, her voice filled with urgency. "That ship, it's heading for the planet." Marcus's eyes narrowed as he turned to look at the massive Varkari ship on the screen. "We have to stop it before it reaches the surface. If it lands, we'll lose everything." Zorana's mind raced. The battle was already chaotic, and this new threat could be the final blow. She had to act fast. Without thinking, she turned to the communication officer. "Prepare the fleet. We're launching a full counterattack on that ship." But Marcus stepped forward, holding up a hand. "Wait," he said. "We can't engage them head-on. We need to be strategic." Zorana hesitated. She knew Marcus was right. The Varkari ship was too powerful for a direct assault. "What do you suggest?" "We need to disable their engines, take out their propulsion systems," Marcus explained quickly. "That ship can't reach the planet if it can't move." Zorana nodded, a spark of understanding in her eyes. "You need to lead the strike team. We can't afford any mistakes." Marcus's face remained calm, but Zorana could see the determination in his eyes. "I'll take care of it." Within moments, Marcus was on his way to the warship's command center, preparing to lead the final mission. Zorana watched as he disappeared into the halls of the palace, knowing that this was the moment that would decide their future. If Marcus succeeded, the Varkari would be defeated. But if he failed, Drazar Prime would fall. The mission was risky. Marcus led a small, elite team of Drazar soldiers aboard one of the fastest ships in their fleet. Their objective was clear: get close enough to the Varkari flagship, disable its engines, and ensure it couldn't reach the planet. As they neared the massive warship, Zorana watched through the command center's windows, praying for Marcus and his team's success. The battle outside intensified. The Drazar fleet had launched another wave of attacks, keeping the Varkari distracted. Zorana knew that time was running out. Marcus's team had to succeed, or they would all be doomed. Suddenly, a message came through the comms. "We've breached their hull. We're inside. Engaging engines now." Zorana's heart skipped a beat. Marcus's team was inside the Varkari flagship. The next few moments felt like hours. Zorana clenched her fists, watching as the battle raged on, knowing that the outcome now rested in Marcus's hands. Minutes later, another message came through. "Engines are down. We've stopped them." The entire command center erupted in cheers. Zorana's eyes filled with relief and admiration. Marcus had done it. The Varkari flagship was no longer a threat. With its engines destroyed, it drifted helplessly in space, its crew now completely disoriented. The remaining Varkari ships, realizing they had lost their command ship and their advantage, began to retreat. The Drazar and human forces launched one final assault, wiping out the remaining Varkari ships. It was over. The Varkari had been defeated. Zorana stood tall in the command center, her heart racing with a mixture of exhaustion and pride. She turned to the screens, watching as the remaining Varkari ships retreated into the darkness. Their people had been saved, but it was thanks to the bravery of Marcus, the human diplomat who had become her partner in every sense of the word. As she watched the battle finally come to an end, Zorana couldn't help but smile. They had won, not just because of the Drazar's strength, but because of their unity. Their strategy, in the unexpected power of their alliance with humanity. Together, they had proven that they could overcome even the most impossible odds.